Hello everyone, my name is Kim York. I work with the KDE Munis Support Team here in Frankfurt. I am joined today with our team lead Kristen Lambert, who will be manning the computer for any questions that you might have today. As they come in, the address will be at the bottom of your screen. Our topic today is everything you ever wanted to know or maybe didn't want to know about PSD and CSD reporting. And I'm really thankful that everyone is joining us today. And if you did attend my CSB session in the spring, we did already cover this, but I think there's so much there you should be able to pick up a lot more information. So let's get started. I'm going to start today with the EPSB ID import program that we initiated last year, but I wanted to refresh any new people with that this year as well. The EPSB ID import report builds a file containing EPSB license numbers for you to upload into Munis. It's going to match the Social Security number and the date of birth in Munis, and it will import into the state ID field in the employee master. So if you know me, you know that my background is teaching, so I'm always trying to take something that can be difficult and make it a little simpler for you. So I tried to create a graphic that I thought might help you understand this process a little bit better. And as you can see on the graphic, it's going to start in Infinite Campus, where you'll pull the validation report. The validation report is where you'll actually see any mistakes or anything that's coming out of it, any empty fields. You'll make corrections. You'll then pull the EPSB ID report. You'll save that somewhere on your computer, at which point you're going over to the Munis program, where you will upload the file. You will check the error report and make manual corrections in Munis. At this point, when you run your PSD report, if you're still at this point missing any EPSB ID numbers, you're going to watch out for error number 50. And we'll talk about each of these steps as we go along the way. So first things first, we're going to look at the validation report, and this is pulled from Infinite Campus. You'll see your path here to the EPSB upload in Infinite Campus. And you'll go to the toolbar and choose whether you're looking at a single school or all the schools for the report. And then you'll choose whether or not you're choosing the validation report or the Munis upload file. And as you can see, this is an actual sample of what the validation report looks like. And you can see that the final column will give you an N or a Y, which represents whether or not that file is going to upload to the ID import report. If you have an N, that means that it is not going to import and you're missing an EPSB ID number. That is the only thing that the N represents, is that you are missing an EPSB ID import number. But you will also want to sort for the birth date and the Social Security number, because those things have to match and have to be in those fields when you pull that ID import report, because again, that's what's going to match when you pull it over to Munis. So remember that corrections must be made in Infinite Campus before the EPSB upload file is created in order for that file to have the most accurate information. So any questions that you have regarding pulling the Infinite Campus information, if it's in regarding to validation report issues, you're going to speak with Shale Detweiler. If it's general Infinite Campus issues, it will be Lisa Keeter or Becky Jenkins. They're all with the Division of School Data Services. So this is what the EPSB ID import file looks like. You have the Social Security number, birth date, their EPSB ID number, and their staff number. And please remember that when you import a file into Munis, that you need to import the EPSB ID import file. We had a couple of situations last year where people were trying to import the validation report, and that will not import. So here is your path to the EPSB ID import program and what that's actually going to look like. And the steps that you'll have are to choose Define. You'll browse for the file wherever you save that on your computer. You will then click OK and Accept and choose to import. You will choose an output and click OK. And then look over the report for errors and commit to the upload. The EPSB numbers will import into the state ID field of your employee master. So the EPSB ID appears in the EPSB ID field when the PSD-CSD reports are generated. And as you can see highlighted in yellow were the new screens where the EPSB ID numbers will import to. And this is the EPSB ID import proof. There are two actual errors that you could receive with this, and one is that the import file does not match an existing employee in Munis, or that it's a duplicate last four of Social Security number and date of birth. And this is a grid to kind of give you an idea of what those errors actually mean. The first one, which is import file does not match an existing employee in Munis, there are three possible explanations for that. The last four digits of the Social Security number does not match an employee in Munis. And so it could be that the Social Security number is wrong in either Infinite Campus or Munis. So you'll need to check to see if it matches in both systems and correct where it's not accurate. And then date of birth does not match an employee in Munis. Again, the same situation. The date of birth could be incorrect in either Infinite Campus or Munis. You just need to check to see where it's incorrect and make those corrections. And then employee may not exist in Munis. And this is a case where you may have employees that are in Infinite Campus but not in Munis, such as area technology teachers that need to have a schedule in Infinite Campus but are not in Munis. So you'll just have to look for those individuals. And duplicate last four of Social Security number and date of birth. The two possible explanations for that are that more than one employee exists in Munis with the same last four digits of the Social Security number and date of birth. Of course, that's going to be a very rare thing to have happen, but it could happen. So if you, that's one of the possible explanations for duplicate Social Security number and date of birth. The other is that the employee in Munis has more than one master file. So it can be that an employee has both a terminated employee master file and a regular employee master file. If they have both, you're going to get this error, and we'll have to manually update that in the employee master. So when you're reading your error reports, there are several ways you can determine which employee is receiving the error. You're going to see that the EPSB ID import proof has only the error and the record number, the employee number, and the error itself. You can actually look at if you'll see the red arrow has 4 marked, you can see that that's record number 4, and then you can go to the EPSB ID import file where you see the other red arrow, and you'll see record 4, and that will help you match these up. You can also check directly against the validation report where you have names on the file, or you can actually search in Munis for the last 4 of the social or date of birth, and that will help you determine who these errors are for. So entering missing EPSB ID numbers. You can actually do a search to see which of those records are missing EPSB ID import numbers. You will choose search. Enter less than 0 in the EPSB ID field that you see highlighted there in yellow, and click accept. And you'll need to go in then and manually enter those EPSB ID numbers in the employee master for any that you may be missing, and then regenerate your PSD report. So error code 50. After you've actually ran your PSD report, this is the only code that your error code that you should receive, and it's just letting you know that no matter what you've done up to this point, you're still missing an EPSB ID number for someone, and you'll need to manually add those into Employee Master and then regenerate your PSD report. So notes, you have to have an EPSB ID number to submit your PSD report. Everyone on the PSD report has to have an EPSB ID number, and be sure to utilize your validation report. If you can clean that validation report up and make it as accurate as possible, you're going to have less errors as you go through the process. So why is this process necessary? We're trying to secure the amount of information that contains Social Security numbers. So this is just another step in the direction of keeping people's information confidential. And it says, our district did not enter EPSB ID numbers for our staff, but many of them have one already. How are these entered? So for several years, KDE has imported staff EPSB ID numbers into Infinite Campus. It's one time a year, and as they have said, it's not a foolproof program. For the most part, it gets those numbers in there, but it really is district responsibility to make sure that those EPSB ID numbers are on file. And so are EPSB ID numbers required for classified staff? No. Classified staff may have those numbers because they may have been in positions before where they had to file or have an EPSB ID number, but they are only required for certified staff in the PSD report. So at this point, I'm wondering, do we have any questions, Kristen, in regards to the EPSB ID import?
No, not yet.
Okay, we'll move on. So we're going to start the section with CSD and PSD reporting. So we'll start with the CSD report. And an overview of this report, it produces an electronic file of classified employee information. It's due to KDE by October 1st of each year, and it pulls information from employee master, employee job salary, as well as information on the job class master records. So criteria for someone to pull into the CSD report, they need a summary class code that falls between 7000 and 7999, a group BU containing CLAS or RCLA, and hired as of September 5th of the fiscal year. So what I'm actually going to be going over with CSD and PSD are the most prominent issues that people have when they're actually pulling these reports. If you need the step-by-step, be sure to look at the PSD and CSD guides at the Munis Guide website. But what I'm covering today are mostly those issues that we see in questions that we have come in when districts are actually going through the process. So we'll start out with allocation codes, because I think allocation and FTE seem to be the two areas where we get the most questions. And in this case, we have an employee who performs a single job but at several locations. They will have multiple CSD records due to the allocation code set up in job salary. So an example here would be an instructional assistant who works for 4 different elementary schools. There will be 4 CSD records with an FTE of 1, but an allocation of 25 for each of those 4 schools. If the contract is for 186 days, the contract days reported on each of the records will be 46.50, which is simply 186 days divided by 4, the 4 schools. Excuse me. The base pay records for a single job class code will always equal 100 for allocation, and the days will always add up to the standard contract. The FTE percent is to be 1 for all records. The annual salary, reference salary, and days are prorated by the allocation percentage. So again, I wanted to create kind of a graphic so that you could kind of see this, visualize it. And in this case, we have Betsy. And Betsy is an instructional assistant. She has 1 job class code. She's working 186 contract days divided between the 4 schools. So each of the 4 graphics around the allocation are her CSD records. And as you can see, the allocation is 25 for each of those 4 records, but the FTE is 1. It's 1 job class code. You will have a 1 FTE on every record. And the days, again, are prorated. It's the 46.5. It's her 186 contract days divided by 4. So looking at FTEs, employees who perform multiple jobs will have multiple pay records with an FTE of full-time equivalent of less than 1 on each record. So there's going to be more than 1 job class code, so they can't be 1 full-time person for 1 job class code. This will be divided out. An employee is an instructional assistant half-time and a supply service aide half-time. Each position or job class code will have an FTE of 0.50. If the same employee was an instructional assistant at 2 different schools, this is where allocation is going to come back in, then the instructional assistant position would have an FTE of 0.5, and that particular job would have an allocation of 50 on each of the locations served. So again, we're going to have a couple of graphics to kind of put this in perspective. So now we have Bradley. Bradley is an instructional assistant and a supply service aide. 50-50 on each one, but that totals 1 FTE. Now on the second screen, we have Bradley, 50% instructional assistant, 50% supply service aide. He has 2 different job class codes, equal 1 FTE. But as the instructional assistant, his allocation is broken down into 2 different schools. He works for John Doe Elementary and Mary Doe Elementary. So the allocation is then going to be broken down to 50-50 on the allocation. So hopefully you'll be able to use these graphics if you have a situation like this come up, be able to go back and reference these graphics and be able to know what you need to put into the system. So next are hybrid employees. This is another area that can cause some confusion during PSD and CSD. As a note will always appear at the end of your report that says, check the setup of hybrid employees. This is a reminder for you to verify employees who are serving in a classified position but paying into KTRS are included on the CSD report. Some examples are Frisky directors, CCLC directors, finance officers, and the school nurse. So the thing to remember here is that employees who serve in a position requiring a teaching certificate with EPSB, those employees are the only ones that get reported on PSD file. All others must be included on the CSD report. So that's the key. Are they in a position requiring a teaching certificate with EPSB? They will be reported on the PSD file. So generating the CSD records is simply your path to the CSD report and the screen that will appear. You can manually update CSD records. So some errors can be resolved by updating the employee record on the CSD screen. You'll select Search, Update, make your changes, and click Accept. But the thing to remember is that by manually updating the CSD records, that does not update things in the system. It does not update employee master or job class. You want to be sure that you go back into Munis and update those things as well. And you can also manually add a CSD record. You simply select Add, enter the appropriate information, and select Accept. But you cannot manually add a CSD record unless that employee has an employee master file. And creating the electronic file. Once the CSD records have been reviewed and edited, a file must be created for submission to KDE. You'll do a find on all records, then select the electronic file button. A CSD file will automatically be created. A file name will appear, and that will be the name that you will need to be able to submit your electronic file to KDE. So actually creating the electronic file, submitting the electronic CSD file to KDE, it's due by October 1st, and you'll use the Seek Data Web Submission application. We'll cover this a little bit more momentarily. So only one CSD file is accepted by KDE. In the event that you need to submit a second file, you will need to email finance.reports@education.ky.gov. Let them know that they need to deny that original file so that you can submit again. So the most common CSD report errors that you're going to receive are listed in this grid. We're going to go over each one individually, but this grid would be something to kind of keep handy if you needed this in the future. But the first one that we get is error 6.50, which is an invalid object code on the CSD record. The problem is that an object code on a CLAS group BU summary class in 7,000 range does not contain an appropriate GL object code. Valid object codes for CSD reporting are 0130, 0131, and 0160. And something else to remember is that you should never have an employee who only has an 0131, which is extra duty. They always have to have a base pay record of 0130 or 0160 before you would have an 0131. Another one that we see is error 11, which is no race selected. And it's mostly that if you look at the ethnicity and the race boxes in the employee master slide that you have here, you have yes, Hispanic or Latino, or no, not Hispanic or Latino. If you mark yes, Hispanic or Latino, you don't need to mark anything under race. However, if you do mark no, not Hispanic or Latino, you do need to mark something in race. And this is where we get the issue. A lot of times people will mark no, not Hispanic or Latino and fail to put something in the race field, and you're going to get error 11. So error 16, which is an invalid summary class code. The problem is that a summary class code outside the list of valid KDE codes exists on the pay record. To correct this, you need to update the job class master record with a valid summary class code. And you actually have the grid there for classified summary class codes being in the range of 7,000 to 7,999. And it moves over to job class codes, and you need to have job class codes in the range of 8,000 to 8,999. And of course you want to use object codes 0130, 31, and 0160. So error 1610 is no summary class code defined. The problem here is that the job class code associated with the employee's pay doesn't contain a summary class code. To correct that, you simply want to go into the job class master and provide an accurate and valid summary class code. Error 26, which is an invalid combination really of BU, job class, and object code. So the error will generate when an employee has an invalid combination of group BU, job class code, or object code. Records will not pull into the CSD file when this error is present. So to correct this, you need to update the employee master and/or job salary records to reflect the appropriate combination. Error code 35, and this is one we see a lot. This is a calculation of hours times contract days times the rate of pay minus the annual salary. If it's off plus or minus $25, you're going to receive this error. You simply need to go back in, follow this calculation, and get it within $25, and you'll pass the error test. So the most common CSD report warnings, there's actually only one that's really common, and that's the 124, and that's the finance officer is not reported for the district. So you need to have a summary class code of 7166, 7184, 7185, or 7186 to pass this error test. So moving on to the PSD report. An overview of the PSD report would be that again, it needs to be submitted no later than October 1st. The employee status on the employee master record must be set to active. Employee pay records must contain summary class codes 0010 to 3999 and/or 5000 to 5999. The employee job salary records must have a group BU of CERT or RCER. And the accuracy of PSD data is essential. It's used in federal government reports. It's used with state legislature, and to verify the accuracy of all the information prior to submitting a file to KDE is really important. So salary tables. Each school district's base pay salary tables will be submitted to compare to the PSD files. The tables are used to verify each employee's base and extended day reference salary and that it corresponds to the salary tables. Salary tables must contain at least 40 steps for each grade and rank, and the naming scheme for the salary tables must conform to KDE requirements for certified base pay. You can find that naming scheme in Appendix C of the PSD guide. So retirees are another area where we get a lot of questions. Hopefully the 4 bullets that you have here will cover any situation where a retiree may be coming back to work and help you understand how you need to set them up in the system. So the first one are retirees returning to work as a classified staff member. They're coming in CLAS or RCLA. They should have a summary class code that falls between 7,000 and 7,999 range. Then we have retired employees that retired paying KTRS. They return to work in the district in a classified position that requires a 4-year degree, and they will pay KTRS. They will be coded to an RCLA group or BU. The next one is retired employees, that retired paying KTRS. They return to work in the district in a classified position that does not require a 4-year degree. They will pay and they will be paying CERS. They are coded to CLAS Group BU. So the difference here is, do they or do they not require a 4-year degree to know which group they need to participate in. And the last one is retired teachers hired back for a position requiring a teaching certificate will have a Group BU of RCER. They should be pointed to a retired employee salary table. The rate of pay is a negotiated rate involving maximum amounts that are set by KTRS. They should pull into the PSD report. However, their grade and their steps will be blank on the PSD records when records are generated. KDE does not compare the reference salary to any salary table as long as a Group BU has been set to RCER. So extra service pay. Certified employees who receive extra service must have a separate employee job salary record for each service job. Each service job salary record must reflect a job class code linked to an allowable extra service summary class code. and all certified extra service summary class codes are in the range of $5,000 to $5,999. And certified employee job salary records for those employees who receive extra service pay must contain the appropriate object codes, 0112, 13, or 14. So looking at FTE mid-year hires working in one position, hopefully this will be another thing that you can actually reference when you have these situations come up. A partial year employee will be updated in the PSD file with a full year of days employed when the file is generated. So those days employed need to actually reflect the full day, the full amount of days if that employee were to work the whole entire year. The days employed field must stay at the number of contract days the district has set for the full year on a standard certified contract. The reference salary field must also contain amount reflective of the full year. The annual salary is the actual salary the employee will make. So if you'll remember, the reference salary would be the reference. How much would this person make if they worked the entire year? The annual salary is the actual amount that they will make for the number of days they will work for that year. The FTE field needs to reflect the percentage of the standard contract days the number of days the employee will work represents. So looking at the next bullet, an example, an employee is hired after the start of the school year and will work 170 days of the 187 days contracted. You simply divide the 170 by 187 and you get the 0.9091 FTE that you actually see in the fields. The resulting FTE will have to be manually updated in the PSD file after it is generated if it has not been entered on the job salary record. The FTE must be entered to the 10,000th position, as you can see, the 0.9091. So employees working in multiple positions. This is much like we discussed in the CSD report. Employees who work in more than one position should have multiple job salary records. An example, an employee is 50% high school classroom instructor and 50% media specialist. Each job salary record will be set up reflecting a portion of the total annual salary. Examples of job salary records are on the top and PSD records are on the bottom to reflect the 50% high school classroom instructor and 50% media specialist. So note number 1, allocation codes can also be used in conjunction with FTE when needed. Employees who perform a single job but at several locations or whose salary is being split between various GL accounts will have multiple PSD records due to the allocation set up on the job salary record. And note 2, Error 27 and Error 2720, these errors print erroneously on employees who are working in multiple positions. Simply review the employee's PSD records and verify that it is set up correctly. If they're set up correctly, you can simply disregard those errors and move forward. So the grade and step. The grade and step for employees having multiple job salary records should all be the same. The PSD file can only generate into the PSD records the information that is found on the job salary records. And again, with hybrid employees, you'll verify that the employees serving in a classified position but paying into KTRS are set up with a group BU of CLAS and object code 0130. These employees must be reported on the CSD file, not the PSD file. So creating the salary table. An electronic file of the MUNIS salary tables are created for submission to KDE. The file will be submitted using the Seek Data Web Submission application, and in order to submit successfully, the tables must reflect the following. The naming structure must conform to KDE standards. The salary table file for the PSD submission must contain at least 40 years of data for each grade, and all tables must contain the same number of steps. An example here is if Rank 1 Step 1 table contains 44 steps, then all tables must contain 44 steps. And this is your path to the Kentucky PSD report, where you will select Salary Table button on the left of the screen. The Salary Table screen will appear, and you'll click Search to find the appropriate salary tables by entering each criteria into the effective date and grade rank fields. You'll select Accept to pull the files, and the following screen will display. You'll select electronic file, and the name will appear at the bottom of your screen, and again, that's the file name that you will need to be able to submit to KDE. This is your path to the Kentucky PSD report and the screen that will appear. And how to resolve certain PSD report errors. Errors can be resolved by correcting the job class master, employee master records, and/or employee job salary records. After errors have been corrected, the Recalc button can be selected to recalc a single employee's PSD record. Multiple errors can exist due to a single problem on an employee's record. So for example, if you have an error 16, which is invalid summary class code, this may also kick out error 6, which is no base pay record. So a lot of times you'll have more than one error, and you can correct one error, and that will actually be like a domino effect and actually correct the rest of the errors that are present. And so a note is that not all error tests on the KDE submission site are included in Munis. So even though you're ready to submit through Munis and you have all those errors corrected, when you actually submit to KDE, there are other errors that can happen. So looking at manually updating PSD records, this is very much like CSD records. You can manually update those records, but that doesn't correct that in employee master or employee job salary. We highly recommend that you always go back and correct those in employee job salary and employee master, because you're going to continue to have the same issues if you don't correct it in the Munis system. Same thing for adding PSD records. The employee does have to have an active employee master in order for you to manually add a PSD record. And so the electronic file. The electronic file must be created after the PSD records have been generated, reviewed, and edited. Find all records, select electronic file from the PSD report screen. Again, you're going to get a file name that you'll want to note. You'll need that when you submit to KDE. And a PSD file must be submitted to KDE again by October 1st, and it is submitted through the Seek Data web submission application. And again, if you need to submit a replacement file, you need to email finance.reports@education.ky.gov so that they can deny the original file and you can submit a second file. So the grid that you're seeing here are the most common PSD report errors. We'll go over these. Code 6, which is no base pay record. The problem here, the error test checks to ensure there is a base pay record, object 0110, for all employees in the PSD report. To correct this, you would simply make sure that there is an object code of 0110 record for all certified employees. Code 6.50, an invalid object code for PSD records. This error test checks to ensure the PSD report contains valid certified expenditure object codes 0110, 11, 12, 13, or 14. So you'll want to check to make sure the object code is a valid certified payroll object code and that it has been properly set up as an expenditure object code in the GL chart of accounts. So error code 26, this is an accurate summary class code for object code. This error test verifies the summary class codes coordinate with valid object codes. And you actually have grids that I've entered here so that you can actually see. Summary class code 0110 to 3999 would need to be with object codes 0110 and 0111, and so on through the screen. You want to make sure that those all do match accordingly. And error code 44, no kindergarten instructor coded in the district. We see this a lot. This error verifies that all districts have a kindergarten instructor with a summary class code of 2025. Error code 2720, you want to check the reference salary by the FTE minus the annual salary. And this is a big one. We get this a lot. This error test compares the reference salary amount indicated on the PSD record to the PSD base pay, which is the 0110 records, and multiplies it by calculated FTE for 0110. It then subtracts the product from the annual salary amount. If the district is not within a specific range defined by KDE, you will not be allowed to submit. So you'll want to verify that the job salary record contains the correct reference salary for 0110 on the district salary tables that you submit to KDE. Some warnings that you'll get, again, these are just things that you want to check for, is 22, which is media specialist not reported for the school. You want to make sure that you have a media specialist reported. 23, which is that the DPP is not reported for the district. You'll want to make sure that that's included. 29, no superintendent reported for district summary class 0010. KDE is watching to make sure that a superintendent is reported. If it's not reported in your PSD report, they will be contacting you to find out why there is no superintendent reported. 124, again, finance officer not reported for the district summary class code 0040. You want to make sure that you have a finance officer listed as well. So updates for V11 2 and above. And some of this is going to be news that you've already heard, but for new people, it's modifications to error tests. The generate process will only look at active employee master records when generating the CSD or PSD records, which was a great update. And you have a mass purge functionality, which allows the user to find a group of records and have the ability to select a mass purge button on CSD or PSD screen. And those are highlighted for you as well. So questions on state reporting. The KDE Munis team has 2 shared team email boxes for support. Questions to the team box will ensure you get a more timely response. We can be working at the same site or different sites and working on different projects. If you send an email to these email addresses, we'll all 3 on our team actually see those and we can respond, really quick. If you have questions on health insurance imports, ACA, or Kentucky Employee Benefits, if you could email the KDE Chris Support Desk at education.ky.gov, or any other questions, munis@education.ky.gov. And we have our KDE Munis blog. The KDE Munis team maintains a blog with all communication that's emailed. If you miss an email, hit the blog. Most likely they're there. If you need that email address, you have a link. If you need that, you're welcome to email us at themunis@education.ky.gov, and we can send that link to you as well. Well, Kristen, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do. My time has finally arrived. I'll give you a break for a second, catch your breath. So we did have a few questions here. One was about the PowerPoint, which it was just an honest mistake. We did mail that PowerPoint out today on the reminder, so you do have that communication. We had another good question here. Do we need to do anything with the area tech teachers that pull from Infinite Campus if it gives us an error on them and when we do the EPSB import? And I believe that answer would be no, you can just ignore that. It's on the file, but they're not in Munis. They're just giving you a warning message, Munis is. It's not something you can disregard if you know that person is an area tech teacher. So another question we had is, what happens if we have employees that are still waiting on certification from EPSB? And we ran into this some last year.
We did. We entered, last year we had the issue, I think we entered a series of 9s to cover that until that actual person, and they looked at those. They would actually
You can go ahead and work on your PSD report, and if towards the end of the month when it's required to go ahead and submit it, if you still don't have it, then we would be recommending you enter, I guess it's 9.
I think it's a series of 9 9s.
I think we said 9 9s. You email us, or
we'll check that for
double check that. But you could also manually enter that on the PSD record, so you don't have to regenerate everything again for those people that are delayed. So we had another question that I'm not sure how well we can answer, but will the PSD be accepted with a standard certified contract days of more than 187 days?
Yeah, I don't think there are any guidelines for that. I think the FTE just has to accurately reflect the number of days that are listed that you have in your system.
I don't believe the Division of District Support would be denying those, but we can double check on that. And the only other question I have is, who's responsible for getting the EPSB numbers into Infinite Campus? Because they're the payroll person, they're doing the PSD report, but they have nothing to do with Infinite Campus. So
hopefully you'll have an Infinite Campus person who does this work. Of course, we mentioned that KDE annually, and we don't have a set date for when that happens, but they do upload these numbers into your district systems, but they're not foolproof and not everything gets put in. So it is the district's responsibility, and I would imagine that's going to be different district to district.
You're going to have to just talk to the person there that handles IC and get a jump on it. So
maybe a team effort.
Exactly.
And you can actually, the EPSB ID import process is something you can start now. Start getting, checking. You can pull them into PSD and actually do the report and see what you're missing. now before this process ever gets
exactly,
way
because you
underway.
can generate the PSD report as many times as needed till you're ready.
So that's something you can get started with now.
Okay, well that's all we had. Kim is our PSD guru, but like she said, please send any emails, questions on your reporting. For anything else state specific to that Munis box, the team all has access to it. And during PSD, CSD time, we're all busy helping districts, so if we could have one central location where those questions are going to, it works much better for not just us, but you all. You're going to get a quicker response.
Absolutely.
So that's all we had today. Thanks for
joining us.
joining us.
Thank you all so much. Have a great afternoon.